Let's learn about the switch statement, which is an alternative way of writing a complicated if-else statement when all we want to do is to compare one value to multiple different options, basically. So in this example, let's say we have a weekday variable, and for each day there is a different activity. So basically we're going to map one activity to each day. So let's say day, and I'm setting it here to Monday. Now, maybe you're wondering why I'm basically hard coding all these variables and how this would work in the real world. Well, in a real application that's used by users in the browser, usually most of the data comes from user input. And so then we wouldn't be hard coding all of this stuff. Okay? But right now, well, we are just learning how to code. And so it's absolutely no problem at all to just hard code all of these values here. Okay? Now, anyway, going back to our example here, let's now essentially map one activity to each day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And for that, we could use an if-else statement with multiple else-if blocks, but we can also use the easier to use switch statement. So let me just write how that works, and then I'm going to explain it in a bit more detail. So what we're switching is basically the day. So this is what we're going to compare to multiple options. Then we need the curly braces to define a block, and then we can define cases. So let's say case Monday. Then this colon, and notice how it's a colon and not a semicolon like this. Then another indentation, and then here comes the code that we want to do. So as always, we log something to the console. And once more, in a real-world app, we will of course not be logging stuff to the console all the time. This is once more just so that we can learn how all this different stuff works. So let's say on Monday I plan my course structure. And here we can actually execute multiple lines of code. And we don't need curly braces for that. So after the case and the colon, all the lines are then executed. Okay, and the syntax of this switch statement is actually a little bit unusual. So it's unlike anything else in JavaScript, but well, that's just how it is implemented, I guess. So anyway, we will execute two console.logs here. So the second one is go to coding meetup. Okay, so basically what this will do is it will compare day to Monday here in a strict equality way. So this here is basically writing day equal Monday. And if this is true, then this code here will be executed. Okay? Now, after this, we actually need this break statement. And you will see why in a second. And now let's add the next case here. So case Tuesday. So basically we're going to do one for each day of the week here. So let's say prepare theory videos and then another break. And I wish that preparing theory videos would only take one day, but it doesn't. Okay, so Wednesday is the next one. And actually we can do a nice little trick, which is to run the same code for two different values. So all we have to do is specify this case, and then we can specify another case right after it. So let's say Thursday here. And so whatever we write here will then be executed for both Wednesday and Thursday. So without needing any logical operators as we would need with an if-else statement. And actually we're going to translate this into an if-else statement after we're done here so that we can analyze the difference. So let's say Wednesday and Thursday I write code examples. On Friday I record videos And here's a small bug. So it's a colon, as I was saying you. And then let's do Saturday. And also the same for Sunday. So console.log, and then here, enjoy the weekend. Okay. And then, oh, I actually am forgetting the breaks here. So break. And I will show you in a second what happens without the break. But anyway, to finish, we can also set a default. And so the default is going to be executed if all the other cases fail. So default, just like this. And then here we can simply say console.log, not a valid day. So basically we're using this for an invalid weekdays. It's basically like an else block at the end of a long if-else statement. Okay, so let's now check out the result. And indeed, we get these two logs here from here. So from line 379 and 380, which are exactly these two lines of code. Then if I change it to, let's say, Wednesday, like that, we get write code example. And on Thursday, it should yield the same result because, yeah, we did this here for these 2 days. Now I guess I wrote something wrong. And actually it's here, Thursday, right? But so you saw that actually, since this option here was nowhere to be found, we actually got to the default block, which is then not a valid day. But now we should get the right code examples. Now without the break here, and let me comment it out just for demonstration. If we put this back to Monday, then let's see what happens if we load. And so now we get 3 outputs. We get this one, and this one, and this one. So that's the one immediately after Tuesday. And this happens because without the break, the code simply continues executing. And it stops here because here we have the break. But if I remove this break as well, then it would continue down this structure. And so after each block here, we need to tell it to stop, essentially. And so now it's fixed and it works just fine. Okay, great. That's how the switch statement works. And remember that this actually does a strict comparison. So it does it like this. Here it does, if the day is equal to Monday, then execute this. If the day is equal to Tuesday, execute this, and so on and so forth. So this was really designed for equality and not for like comparing stuff. It is technically possible to do that with some workarounds, but that's not the goal of the switch statement. Now, just as a fun exercise and to get a better idea of how this actually works and also how the if-else statement works, I want to challenge you to write this same logic, but this time as an if-else statement, okay? And to do that, you will have to use a logical operator to translate the case of the Wednesday and Thursday case. So think about what happens. So basically, write code examples should be executed if the day is Wednesday or Thursday, right? So whenever the day is one of these two. So it's impossible to be Wednesday and Thursday because, well, 2 days cannot occur at the same time. So keep that in mind and yeah, pause the video here and really try to do this one on your own. Okay, did you do it? Well, let me just quickly show you how it's done. So remember that we're using strict comparison, so the triple equals. So if it's Monday, then do this, and I will, after finishing the structure, I will just go ahead and copy the console logs from up there. Then we need an else if. For the case it's Tuesday, then we need another else if, in case the day is Wednesday, or if the day is Thursday. And again, the same error. And you see that we're writing quite a lot of repetitive code, especially always the day and then the triple equals. So, and that's what the switch statement kind of tries to avoid. So else if, and then if the day is equal to Friday, do this. Else if the day is equal to Saturday, or the day is equal to Sunday. And finally, also the else block in case that we have an invalid day. So let's grab these here. And note that in this case, we of course don't need the break, because JavaScript will only execute one of these blocks. So Friday and now Tuesday, and finally Monday, these two activities. Okay, give it a save, and now I'm gonna reload here. And so now we should expect the same result here, but twice. Once coming from the switch statement, and once from this big if-else block. Yeah, and indeed, it works just the same. Let's just try another one. Say Friday, just to make sure. And yeah, the result is the same. And so this logic here does basically exactly the same as this. We simply wrote it with a different syntax. Okay, so with the switch statement, we have to write a little bit more code, but in my opinion, it's also a lot more readable, which means that this one is easier to understand if you just read the code. Here we have a lot of this repetitive code and all these curly braces, and it just looks a little bit weirder. At least that's my opinion, but of course everyone is different. Now the switch statement is actually becoming less and less used, but you should still know about it, because there's definitely still a place for it sometimes. And actually in this example, for instance, I would actually prefer to use the switch. Okay, but again, that's down to your personal preference, and it's good that you start basically developing your own coding style and do what you like the most.